Welcome back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack. Ed, let's jump in here. You were comparing little boys playing with toys to little white boys playing with little black boys. How does that compare, Dr. Oleka says? How dare you?
Yeah, and it does. I mean, like, again, when you look at the motivation behind what Ron DeSantis was legislating, it's rooted in him saying that, my way of life is the only way of life that should be taught to kids. And, those that live a different lifestyle, we don't want that being taught anywhere near our kids. And understand that for us soulmates who understand American history, that argument was used against us. That was the whole argument that we had to fight against to desegregate schools and society here. And so to see DeSantis doing it again, particularly towards the LGBT community, is somewhat disgusting. But tomorrow it'll be another community that he chooses to ostracize.
I think it is patently absurd and false to compare racial segregation in schools to saying that teachers cannot teach kids about sexuality and gender identity in the kindergarten through third grade.
But we're having the argument in schools now about critical race theory.
There's nothing. And not only that is not all that bill does. Gay, 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 transgender, gay, 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 gay. There, I said it.
Okay, congratulations for that, Dominique.
Yeah. But what happens if you already had that conversation with your parents? That you know that you're, transgender, or that you're non-binary. Now your pronoun is they, but the teacher can't call you that. They can't explain to the other kids why you're they and not he or she. Now you're going to be misgendered. You're going to be called by the wrong name, and that is problematic because that is hurtful to those children. And that's not okay. You're saying it's okay to inflict trauma on LGBTQ plus teachers so that you can create this, so you can stay within the Republican reality of what America looks like and what the world looks like, which is not the actual real world.
No, that is absolutely false, Dominique. And again, when you
and our soulmates need to understand.
Well, when you actually read the bill, which I have done, I encourage our soulmates to do. When you actually have, what you'll see is that it says encouraging this kind of conversation about sexuality and gender identity in the classroom. So let's take your very real example, Dominique, because I think it's important. You're a kid who has this conversation at home with your parent. You decide that you are confused about where you are on the gender identity.
No, that's not what I said. You know that you're non-binary. Let's not say we're confused. Let's say you're an actual non-binary person.
You start out confused. If you want to say that this student,
maybe you are, maybe you
has reached the conclusion that they are something different, fine. You can use the language you want to use. My point is, what they can do is have this conversation with the school counselor. They can have it with their teacher one-on-one, because even if you feel a certain way about yourself, it doesn't mean you're comfortable with other kids in the classroom doing it. It doesn't mean that those kids and those parents feel comfortable with the teacher having the conversation, because those parents have no idea the perspective that teacher will
So now you're imposing your values on that child.
No,
that child has to be called he when they're really she, or she when they're really he. That's you imposing your political agenda on a 5-year-old.
It's not a political agenda.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. What the soulmates need to understand, that this is absolutely a political agenda. It is absolutely.
It's not a political agenda. What is happening is that the legislature is saying that you can't have these kinds of conversations. Again, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in this conversation who's actually been a teacher. To know exactly what teachers can and cannot do in a classroom. This is the last thing I'll say on this. If you are that student, you can have the conversation with your teacher, with a counselor, with other people. What this bill says is that you cannot have the conversation from a teacher perspective with regard to curriculum and encouraging it with regard to sexuality and gender identity. It is not explicit to the LGBTQ community. If there was a student who's 6 and they say, I like girls and I'm a boy, it's still inappropriate for the teacher to encourage that kind of conversation in school. So you just have to decide if you are on the side of parents or on the side of the left-wing activists and their talking points, as Dominique loves to bring up.
I think the far more likely example of this is actually on the playground with kids bullying other kids and the language that kids use.
That's not included in the bill, Ed.
Well, how do you deal with that if you're a teacher?
You have a conversation
that on the yard. How do you deal with that?
As I pointed out, again, I've actually done these kinds of things as a teacher.
Sure. So how would you deal with it?
You have the conversation with the teacher, and you have the conversation with the counselor, and you have the conversation with the students who are doing the bullying. Because the issue at hand, based on what you've just said, is not about sexuality and gender identity. It is about bullying. Bullying is the problem.
Bullying over sexual identity.
Right.
The thing that
so basically, Dr. Oleka, you're saying that this is something you already put into place. You didn't need a law for it.
What I'm saying is that this explicitly prevents teachers having conversations about sexuality and sexual identity in a classroom. As in, when I'm supposed to be learning about coloring, we're supposed to be learning how to read. I should not be being taught by a teacher when I'm in kindergarten through third grade about sexuality and sexual identity and gender identity. What happens on the playground, if it's bullying, that can be addressed in a different way.
What happens on the playground stays on the playground.